universe. So they use the Kalam cosmological argument, but basically they say, no, I know it is. But what's your response on a scientific point of view on the universe beginning to exist?
There's no evidence the universe had a beginning. That's all. None. Right? So that's same as false. It's based on a misunderstanding of the Big Bang. The Big Bang.
Did you hear that?
I'm not hearing. I want to say hello and no.
No, just okay. Let's
so it's a misunderstanding of the nature of the Big Bang.
Yeah.
What is the question was from the beginning? I missed it as well. I was looking here.
So there's an argument called the Kalam cosmological argument for God, which relies on well, one of the things that. What's your name again?
Rob.
Sorry. What asked me was the scientific perspective on whether the universe had a beginning. And we don't know whether the universe had a beginning. The idea that the universe had a beginning is based off something concrete. It's based off what are called Penrose-Hawking singularity theorems. Okay, and these are very definite, elegant mathematical theorems. But of course, all theorems have assumptions. Okay, and there are three assumptions in those theorems. One of which we know to be false. Okay, and that's the assumption that gravity is always attractive.
Yes.
Okay, and that assumption has been violated by dark energy. We also have good evidence there was something called inflation in the early universe. That also violates that assumption. The second assumption is that space-time is described by this is a bit technical, right? So
no, go for it.
So don't dwell too much on this.
I like cosmology, so I know some of what you're talking about.
So don't dwell too much on this. But there's another technical assumption that the space-time is what's called Lorentzian. Okay, so it's described in a certain way, which is three space dimensions, one time dimension.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, both Penrose and Hawking think that assumption is false now. Okay. Now we don't know that that's false, so that's their thinking. There are some good arguments why it could be false in the early universe, but we don't know. Okay. Third assumption, and this is the most important, is that gravity is described by Einstein's theory of general relativity. And certainly it's a very accurate theory and applicable in very number of diverse regimes. But with the whole observable universe is smaller than an atom, then quantum mechanics has to come into play. Okay? And general relativity doesn't have any quantum elements in it. So therefore the conclusion is extremely dodgy. So what we would need to really understand what happened at the Big Bang is we would need what people call a quantum theory of gravity. Unless we don't have a verified quantum theory of gravity. So basically we don't know what happened. However, we do have a number of approaches to quantum gravity that have passed certain theoretical tests, if you like. So, for example, quantum gravity is able to show how the area of a black hole is proportional to its entropy and things like that. Okay, so when you use these theorems, you see, like in loop quantum gravity, for example, the Big Bang is a big bounce. That there was a contracting universe. Now we don't know that that's right. It's speculative at the moment.
How does gravity fit into the grand unification theory? Or does it not?
Well, we don't have a grand.
There isn't one, is it?
Well, we don't have a verified one.
Because the gravity doesn't fit any of the model.
Well, it does fit in, but we don't know if those models are right. Okay.
So it doesn't fit in if it's not right.
No, we're not saying they're not right. We don't know that they are right, but that doesn't mean we know that they are wrong.
So what would be your response be to, because obviously Alan Guth, I watched some of his videos, I'm fascinated.
Yeah.
So when he says, I don't know if the universe had a beginning, which is what you said, I suspect the universe didn't have a beginning.
Yes.
It's very likely eternal, but nobody knows. What does he mean by eternal then?
It exists eternally into the past.
In what form? But not as a universe or as some other form of matter? Or
when he says universe, you have to understand he means something. He has a definite meaning, which is everything. Okay. Now, in Alan Guth's cosmology, our universe is part of a multiverse.
Yes.
So we're really talking about the multiverse. Okay. We're not talking about our little bubble of the universe.
Yeah.
I say little bubble of the universe. It may be infinitely big, but that's another issue.
Oh.
Okay. So he's talking about the whole multiverse. Now, there is a theorem that he proved with Vilenkin and Borda, which implies that inflation is the beginning, but it doesn't imply the universe is the beginning. I don't know if you've seen our film.
No, I haven't. Please, give it to me.
I'll show you the clip.
Oh,
I thought this might come up.
Yes,
I recorded
because of good old William Lane Craig, of course, distorts the booth
Yeah, he's full of shit.
theorem, isn't it? Yes, yeah.
full of shit.
Suggesting that the universe had a beginning where it's...
This is Alan Guth. I asked Alan Guth. I know
Is this
Alan
your
Guth.
video?
Yes.
That's the one I was watching.
You've seen this?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so just
and you've
to
got the
remind
interview
you what
with
he
the other
said.
guys as well. They all cut together.
Yeah, okay. I don't know if you can hear this.
Played really loud.
It's loud here. No, you can't hear it. It's too much shouting. If you watch it, he says, the theorem that I proved with Alvin Boydell and Alex Valencki shows that inflation had a beginning. It does not show that the universe had a beginning. Okay? It shows that the period of rapid expansion had a beginning. Okay? Now, to be fair to Craig, Valencki did say that it proved the universe had a beginning. Okay?
Did he misspeak or...?
No, Valencki said that.
Yes.
But no one else takes him seriously when he says that.
Oh.
And even Valencki himself, I think, has backed off that. Because that's bullshit.
Okay.
Right? It doesn't prove it. Okay? Valencki did say it. Right? That's true.
Okay.
Yeah? But none of his colleagues would agree with him on that.
Right.
And it's very easily violated by having a contracting universe before it was expanding.
Yes.
Okay? Now, Valencki doesn't think that a contracting universe is particularly realistic. But lots of other people, including Guth, do think it's realistic. And there are reasons to think that it is indeed what happened. Because, for example, models of quantum gravity, like loop quantum gravity, string gas cosmology, they predict that that's what happens. Now, we don't know that that's true. We don't know these models are right. But they are our best attempts at quantum gravity so far.
So uninterrupted, give me your response then to the whole Kalam cosmological from the beginning, because they would interrupt you, but you go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah. Somebody presents that to you.
My response would be, we do not know whether the universe had a beginning. The evidence that people present that the universe did have a beginning is, one, the Big Bang cosmology. But that's just a misunderstanding of the Big Bang. The observational evidence that we have is that the universe was hot and dense in the past. Okay? Now, if you combine that with Penrose-Hawkins singularity theorems, it's true that you get an end to the space-time. So that's true. But these Penrose-Hawkins theorems are not considered reliable by the cosmological community, including Penrose and Hawkins themselves, right? Although they have different approaches to how you deal with this, right? Nobody thinks that these theorems are applicable. Oh, I can't say, I should never say nobody.
Almost nobody, yeah.
But most people don't think that, okay? So the Big Bang does not prove the universe had a beginning, right? Then there's another argument they use, which is the entropy of the universe.
The what?
The entropy.
I'm going to turn you this way so you face that way, because this guy shouts so loud. I won't hear you on the recording, and I want other people to be able to hear what you're saying.
Okay.
Because he's like
so another argument is that the entropy of the low entropy state of the early universe proves that the universe had a beginning, because we would be in a maximum entropy state and we're not. So therefore, the universe is beginning. But that just tells you that the evolution from that low state, has a finite length, but that doesn't tell you what happened before that low state. And there are plenty of models that say, maybe the entropy could change direction at a hypothetical big bounce. Others say that maybe the entropy of a previous state doesn't go through into our universe. Another possibility is there is no maximal entropy, and that could be true in a multiverse. So there's many different solutions to the entropy issue that do not. In fact, I asked Alan Guth, one thing that you have in common, Roger Penrose, is your solution to the entropy problem, both of them, imply an eternal universe, and he agreed that's true, although the form that they take is very different. Roger Penrose doesn't like cosmology, Alan Guth does not, so they're very different solutions, but they both have in common an eternal universe. So the entropy argument, I think, doesn't work. So then people appeal to this broader Guth-Valencki theorem, and it's true that Valencki did say that the theorem proved the universe had a beginning, but I think other cosmologists would not agree, and Guth does not agree, and I believe even Valencki himself has backed off making that stronger statement. So those theorems are applicable. What most cosmologists would say is we need a quantum theory of gravity to understand the Big Bang, and then maybe that can help us understand the nature of the Big Bang, whether it was an absolute beginning, which it may have been. I'm not saying it wasn't, but it might not have been. And in fact, it looks like many theories of quantum gravity now, loop quantum gravity. There's another one called Java-Lifshitz gravity, attempts in string theory, like string gas cosmology, priority universe. These models imply the Big Bang is not the beginning of the universe. And and many of them say there was a contracting universe beforehand. So therefore, the correct statement is we don't know whether the universe had a beginning. We don't know. So now Craig's response is, well, when you say we don't know, you mean we're not certain. No, we don't mean we're not certain. We mean we have no observational evidence at all of anything that happened in what's called the Planck regime. Okay?
The Planck time.
The Planck regime.
Yeah.
So we have no observational evidence at all. It's not that we have a lot, but there's some esoteric bit of philosophy that says we're not certain. No. We have no evidence of anything that happened in the Planck regime. Therefore, any statement the universe has a beginning or does not have a beginning is not valid. We don't know. Okay, so that's my response on that bit of the Kalam cosmological argument.
Cool.
On the other bit, if it had a beginning, it had a cause. I don't buy that because I think our notions of causality are tied up with our notion of time. So, can there be a cause without time? Well, maybe there could be, but it's certainly not something. It's not something that we are used to in our everyday lives. And I think the appeals to causality are, you're appealing to our notions of causality in our everyday lives, and that certainly causes happen before effects. Okay, so therefore, if the universe did have a beginning, which it may have done, then I think it's not clear that you can talk about a cause necessarily. I mean, maybe you can. I don't want to rule that out. And there are theories in physics called where time is an emergent property of some deeper structure. So it's possible, but it's not. We don't really know, whether we can even talk about that meaningfully. It's very speculative. And to say there are causes when there's no time, to me, that's a very speculative statement. It might be true. I'm not saying it can't be true, but there's certainly, you can't. I think what the argument does is appeal to your intuitive notion of causality, and that is inapplicable in my opinion. And then thirdly, let's suppose the universe does have a beginning and it does have a cause, which it might. Both of those statements might be true. Why can't the cause be something? Like Alex Valenkin, who all these theists quote. He believes the universe has a beginning, but he thinks. That the laws of physics effectively create the universe.
From what? What's your best?
Well, from his perspective, the laws of physics exist just platonically. Which is possible. I'm not saying Lincoln's wrong. He might be. He had a brilliant idea. I think it's an ingenious idea, and I'm amazed that someone came up with this. It's absolutely ingenious. But it may or may not be true. We don't know if it's true, right? But he had this idea that. If I understand it correctly, that you get vacuum fluctuations, so particles popping in and out of existence. Okay. Now, some people have suggested Edward Tryon suggested in the 70s that maybe the universe came into being this way, that it's effectively a big vacuum fluctuation, which is possible because if the negative energy of gravity balances the positive energy of matter, then it wouldn't violate any conservation laws.
Yes.
So, although actually in general relativity, these conservation laws are a bit questionable anyway. But the idea is that okay, but then where did the vacuum come from, right? And that's where Valenkin comes in, and he's got this ingenious idea that if you think of space-time quantum mechanically, maybe space-time can fluctuate into existence, but then it's not fluctuating from a vacuum, because a vacuum is in space-time, right? It's fluctuating from, well, I'm going to put it in inverted commas, nothing, right?
What is your version of nothing?
Okay, well, it's not my version.
Oh, what is cosmology's or
well, no. I'm just going to tell you what this model says.
Yes.
Okay. So the model effectively is called. The paper was called "Creation of a Universe from Nothing." Yeah. And this is what Lawrence Krauss is writing about. But he's really taken this idea, I think, from Valenkin. It's really Valenkin's idea. And it's funny because a lot of theists, they love to attack Krauss for this. They don't want to attack Valenkin because they're quoting Valenkin as the one that's telling them the universe had a beginning. But they don't want to. They're missing the fact that he's also saying it came from nothing, which is kind of why he's saying it has a beginning.
Yes.
Right? So when we say nothing, we mean no things, no space, no time. but in some sense, there are still laws of physics, right? So in that sense, it's not from nothing. It depends on how you define nothing. I mean,
what's your
these are
response?
just words, right?
Yeah, to a theist who says, but that's not nothing. So
well,
what
then fine, it's not nothing then. You're right, you know. It's just a label. I don't really. What does it matter, you know? But then you can't really say the universe didn't exist, because then the universe always exists, because you're saying that this is still something, right? But you're trying to tell me, the theist is often trying to say the universe was created ex nihilo, and science proves that. But then if you're saying that's not nothing, then it wasn't created ex nihilo.
Correct.
Right?
But they don't
so you
accept
can't have
that.
it both ways.
Yeah, but the theists don't accept. They want a creation ex nihilo, and their version of ex nihilo is the absence of anything, even the potential for something to come into existence. But my response has always been, well, that's conceptual. Have we ever? Why should we believe that such a thing
ever
is
existed?
even
Right.
possible?
I mean, there's the philosopher's nothing, if you like.
Yeah.
That's never been observed anywhere.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I don't know why it's so interesting to talk about it.
Because otherwise they are left in the position of creation ex materia in some form.
Oh, exactly. So if they're saying that cosmologists like Vilenkin back an idea of creation ex nihilo, well, they do in some sense, but not in the sense that they're using it, right? In the sense that they're using it, it's still creation ex materia or whatever, right?
Correct.
So Vilenkin's idea is that the laws of physics just sort of exist. I mean, he wouldn't say he knows how that is possible.
Yeah.
He would just say, look, if you have laws of physics, you can get a universe from nothing. You just need laws of physics. Okay, then you might say that's not nothing. Fine. Okay. Then it's the universe from laws of physics.
But where do the laws of physics come from? Because that'll be the response from the theists.
I don't think he would propose. I don't know. I'm not claiming this model's right. I think it's an ingenious model.
Yeah.
And it might be right. It might not be. I don't know. But I think he would say, I don't know where the laws of physics come from.
Because theists would just say, oh, well, you're just kicking the problem back one step. Somebody must have created something. Must have created
to be honest,
the laws
I
of
don't
physics.
see why, if God can exist without the universe, why can't the laws of physics exist without the universe?
Because they need a creator, apparently, according to
Well,
them.
that's their claim. Well, then why doesn't God need a creator?
Oh, because he's infinite. So obviously there's a special
that's just
pleading.
assertion.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, you can assert God exists platonically, effectively. You're basically saying God exists platonically in some sense. So if you can assert that, why can't someone else assert the laws of physics do the same?
Because the theist
Again, I'm not saying this is right.
No, sure. But a theist response will be, hey, God, given his natures and all the rest of it, that explains how he can exist forever. But your laws of physics couldn't come from absolute nothing, because that doesn't make sense philosophically. So they must have either they've been eternal, which is essentially what.
Well, maybe
the
they
claim,
were
yeah.
eternal. I mean, fine. But what does eternal mean when there's no time? Things are difficult there, right?
Yes.
How did the old timers justify it? Because that Kalam argument just says quite boldly, the universe had a beginning. And they don't give any.
Yeah, but they don't have to. The argument is only designed to get somebody to accept that the universe had a beginning in the theist version, not the cosmologist version. Once they get there, they still got the heavy lifting of proving that it's a deity and that it's their particular
the
one.
other problem, of course, is that let's suppose you think that there is a beginning and a cause, right? You've got to now establish that it's a mind, right? And to me, the evidence of science is telling us that minds come from brains.
Yes.
So you might say, well, I'll deny the evidence from science, yeah. But then you're appealing to the evidence from science in your Big Bang, right? So it seems very selective, right? I think the evidence, now we don't necessarily know exactly how the brain generates minds, but I don't think there's much doubt that it does. The exact mechanism of how the brain generates the mind, that's a very difficult problem. And I'm not going to claim that problem's been solved, but I don't think there's much doubt that the brain does generate a mind. And therefore, an immaterial mind looks inconsistent with what we know about the world, with what we know about minds. Minds also need an energy source. Show me one mind that doesn't need an energy source, right? Now, the claim here is that God doesn't need an external energy source, okay? But again, that's fine, you can claim that if you want, but then no, you're not consistent with what we know about minds. So it seems to be there's an inconsistent appeal to things that we know, and therefore the argument doesn't hang together.
Yeah, and once you get down to that level, then particularly Muslim speakers will just say that God is beyond our understanding and he's separate from us and we just can't investigate that. But as you quite rightly put out, they have made the claims about this.
Well, they have. If you say that, but then you also say he's omnipotent, he's omnipresent, he's all loving, he's perfectly just, right? And suddenly you do know things about God. You know, so I find that.
If you were
I find
pressed,
that special pleading.
well, agreed. If you were pressed, what would you suggest, just out of your speculation from the cosmologists you've spoken to, if there were some kind of a beginning, whatever that might look like, what from your investigation would you suggest is the most plausible? What brought the universe into existence, if it indeed did?
Okay, I think there's seems to be two competing ideas in cosmology now. There's a very, very popular notion that there was a big bounce, that there was a bounce in the universe. I think that you see from our, you know, I'm not a cosmologist, I don't want to pretend to be a cosmologist. What we have got a slight niche is that I've been making a series of films interviewing the world's leading cosmologists that work on this problem of what was the Big Bang. And what you see very commonly in loop quantum gravity, you have a big bounce. You see that in various models in string theory as well. String theory is a bit more complicated because there are multiple cosmological models. No, it's not so much as multiple, there are multiple dimensions, but where things get a bit more complicated is that there are multiple models of the Big Bang in string theory. It's not just one. In loop quantum gravity, it seems to be pretty much one cosmological model, which is a big bounce. In string theory, there have been multiple models, but it's very common to see. You see it in string gas cosmology, you see it in Gabriel Veneziano's pre-Big Bang model. To some extent, it's even present in the aperiodic model. It's slightly different than the aperiodic model, but that's slightly different. But you see this bounce in the universe. You see it in a genre
that it contracts and expands. Is it eternal?
Okay, it's not necessarily cyclic. People make that mistake.
Right.
It's not necessarily contract, expand, no.
Right.
It's much more likely that it's like an hourglass. So you have our universe, which is expanding out to infinity.
Yes.
And there's a mirror image of it on the other side.
Is that what Sean Carroll is working on with Alan Guth?
Yeah, they have something similar.
Okay.
Yeah, it has that feature.
Yes.
But that would include, presumably, they haven't published a paper yet, so we don't know all the details of the model. And Alan Guth is quite slow at publishing papers, so don't hold your breath. And Palenki complains about that in his book. He calls him like the biggest procrastinator in the world. But Alan is a lovely guy. He's an incredibly nice person, very warm. But apparently he's a bit slow on writing papers. So I don't know when
Maybe he's a bit like an Einstein. It gives me that impression that there's so much going on there that it's difficult to get it down to paper.
I don't know. But anyway, they haven't written the paper yet, so we don't know the details of this model. And I'm not sure how detailed the model will be, because it's probably what you call a toy model, which is just sort of sketching out basic principles rather than all the little details. But yeah, it has that property. But I mean, Guth is very much in eternal inflation. So there would be multiple universes being created, maybe in one direction at a time, and multiple universes being created in the other direction at a time.
Is he a proponent of the multiverse?
Oh, the multiverse, yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
I mean,
is there any? Are most of the leading cosmologists proponents of that?
There's never been a survey done, so I don't
Well, of the
know.
ones you've interviewed.
The ones that I've interviewed, there's common, yeah.
Did you interview Frank Wilczek as well?
No.
Oh,
As far as I know, he's not a cosmologist, he's a theoretical physicist.
Oh, okay.
But there obviously is a lot of overlap with cosmology.
Yeah.
So he probably has written some papers in cosmology. I don't know, I mean, I don't know everybody.
If the multiverse theory is true, there will be a universe where every cosmologist believes in the multiverse. There'll be another universe where no cosmologists believe.
Well, first off, one thing to just say is that you shouldn't think of the multiverse theory. The multiverse in cosmology comes out of the theory of inflation. And inflation is Alan Guth's invention. So Alan Guth is very much a proponent of the multiverse. I think you could say this: most cosmologists accept inflation as true. Although there are a few notable cosmologists that dispute inflation. So I think inflation has a lot of very compelling evidence for, and I think it's a very good bet, and there's a lot of evidence for it, but it's not for sure right.
Sure.
There are alternatives to inflation, like Roger Penrose's conformal cyclic cosmology or various speed of light theory. So there are like legitimate alternatives to inflation, and I think the consensus position is inflation is probably the right model, And for people that work in detail on inflation, you have to remember that most cosmologists don't work in early universe cosmology. Okay, they work on other issues that are not related to that. But the people that work in inflationary cosmology, I think would agree that inflation leads to a multiverse. And certainly Alan Guth said that virtually there are many different models of inflation. It's really a class of models. But Alan Guth said that virtually every single one of them leads to what we call eternal inflation, which is a multiverse. So therefore, to answer your question, do most cosmologists think there's a multiverse? That I don't know, but I think it's true that most cosmologists accept inflation, and inflation does seem to lead to a multiverse. So in some indirect way, maybe the answer to that question is yes, but with the caveats that we said, right?
Can I ask something about the premise number one, the universe has a beginning? Because
Actually, that's premise two.
Whatever begins to exist has a cause.
Right. But I could hang on, just before you ask your question, I just want to spin one thing about that. They say whatever begins to exist has a cause. They don't say everything has a cause. Right? So
that's a flaw in the argument.
So first off, you have to have some distinction between things that begin to exist and things that don't begin to exist. So you have to have some assumption that there's something that doesn't begin to exist. So there's a problem right there. But alternatively, you could also make your own way of rephrasing it. I could just say everything that has a cause has a prior moment in time. I could just say that, right? That's equally valid.
Yes.
Right? So therefore, the Big Bang, if it was the beginning, which it might not be, but if it was, you can't say that has a cause, right? Because it wouldn't have a prior moment in time. Right? That's just those two statements.
That's another way of differentiating. Yes.
Yeah, are equally valid. Like everything that you see having a cause has a prior moment in time.
Yeah,
right.
Good, buddy.
Right. So therefore, can you really extrapolate that to something that doesn't have a prior moment in time? Well, I'm not saying that such an extrapolation is necessarily invalid. It might be valid, but it certainly is speculative to say that it is valid.
Yeah.